Hi. I know, make this a brief introduction. I know people think my videos are too long, and they are really, you know, it's kind of like reading a book. People don't want to read a book, unless it's, an Oprah book or something, or one of Oprah's select books that makes you feel all warm inside. And those same people don't want to watch my videos. People who, it's a TV nation, they prefer not to watch videos that are more than 5 minutes long. There was somebody, I think it was, had some problem with his friend making long videos. On the internet, I thought, on YouTube, I thought, well, whatever, they're long. I try to make this one, try to make them short, but it's kind of like, you want to read a book, and you say, well, why does this book have to be more than a page? Because if it weren't more than a page, it'd be a leaflet or a very small paper. People go through college, write long papers, but I suppose if they had their druthers, they would never, first of all, they don't like using big words. They go to college and they really get upset when they get out of college and people use big words that they used in college, but see no practical use in their everyday life. Their degree was just pretense, as well as their supposed intellectualism, which somebody could well say of me. Mark, you sound intellectual, but you're not very intellectual, or whatever. You could say that. See who's gonna stay going. My mother used to say, people talk. Yep, and they talk and talk and talk. Nothing much comes of it, as has often been said. Nothing much comes of it. So, when you talk about Old Testament, New Testament, this is something that just freaks people out. In the Old Testament, you had, well, a lot of things in the Old Testament that people apparently don't seem to point to reading. Most people that are not very interested in Christianity either don't read it, or they don't read it very well. They read it to get what they want out of it. That's what I spoke before about the will. Their will is not to understand. Their will is to condemn God, often to say they read their Bible every day or whatever. When you look into the Old Testament, you've got a people who have committed themselves to following this God. Known as different from the other gods in the sense that he created the universe. There are very few gods that would be considered created the universe. And then what it comes down to is, once you've got that God, what are his specifications? Like, you have a vehicle and you say, how fast can it go from 0 to 60? That kind of thing. It's like when you look at me and my beautiful face. And I've had several people comment on how beautiful I look. And say, man, that guy, Mark, he is so beautiful. Well, save it for yourself. What kind of God is it? Well, when you write a descriptive book, people get upset and say, well, that's too specific, I don't like that. Well, how do you know it's a specific book? Okay, throw out the book if you won't want it. Anyway, but then they'll come right back again and say, well, I don't buy this book. But then again, let's take it as factual for the sake of argument. All right? These people had dedicated, their lives when either it meant something or was supposed to mean something. A commitment to a God was a serious thing. At least that's what it was supposed to be. And they said, we have committed to this. You remember the amen, amen corner? Do you remember that? Those of you who say, the Bible, or those of you who would like to toy with it. It is written in simple language for a purpose, so that even people who are not particularly literate, although many people that are not particularly literate are good at other things. You know, very competent people that, you know, wouldn't write a book like I'm writing a book. But, so you've got the Amen corner in the Bible. You know what the Amen corner in the Bible is, or do you just know what the Amen corner in some supposed church or some actual church is? Your Amen corner was, this is what we committed to. You say this, and the people shall say Amen. They committed to it. If you want to live here, you live by our rules. Just getting on that subject. People get all upset about that. They were to be the people of God, outwardly manifest. And I emphasize outwardly manifest, because the Bible will say, or for the Bible will say, not all Israel is Israel. Meant that some people were not Israel, no matter who their father was. When you get imprecations in the Bible, oh, don't mess with Israel because those are God's people, you know, that God will repay back those who do things to them, just as you would expect and as you would want either you yourself or somebody else or something else to repay back those who do you evil. Let's not lie to ourselves, okay? Let's not lie to ourselves. We are men of honor. Remember that movie? You know, that Princess Bride movie? I just quoted that recently to a friend of mine. We are men of honor. Lies do not become us. So those were the physical people of Israel. And in the New Testament, you've got people who are committing to the same thing in a more internal way. Same God. How do you rectify? How do you reconcile? Well, when you make a commitment and have rules, you follow those rules. If you don't want to be a part of Israel in the Old Testament, you don't have to be. I've said it before in another video, I believe it was another site. When you follow God in the New Testament, you've got Ananias and Sapphira, for those of you who know that scenario, or that incident, where they wanted to be hypocritical and say, yes, we're following God, and yet betray themselves and their God. And there were repercussions there. There are repercussions for everything we do. Yet, even when God did something that the New Testament is proclaimed and explained, and as well as in Malachi, as something God hates, they were living according to the rules God laid down, which were somewhat, despite people's shock, leaning in the Old Testament for a New Testament kind of reality. But we must realize that the majority of us in the world and in society, just any distinction between the world and the church, we could say it even at that point. The majority of us are living in the world under Old Testament principles. We still have death and penalties, for rape, and death penalty for murderers. Whether you think that's right or wrong, we still have it. We're Old Testament. I'm living in a new world as far as the extra-physical universe. If you want to explain from a Christian perspective, there you're going to get it. We are living in an Old Testament world. The fact that justice would be done by you or by God. You choose which is right. Those who live outside of Israel in the Old Testament, those who live outside of Christ in the New Testament, are not held to those standards. God lets, unfortunately, as our nation crumbles, this is the United States of America I'm broadcasting from or recording from, we have the destruction of our dollar. We are sure, to get on another subject, sure to have blood in the streets. And we, our society is crumbling, whether we realize it or not. So we are living in an Old Testament type of mentality. And that is the God's honest truth. Any questions? I will receive them. Thank you.